on December 19th, 2001, Nogales, Mexico. Sánchez, an old artifact collector, reported a horrifying incident about a voodoo doll that left everyone in a state of shock. This is the story he told the authorities. The story has been translated to English. I had been collecting since childhood, and my hobby turned into a full-fledged business when I grew older. One day, while going through a website for auction plans, I got to know about an auction happening in a distant village that had a few valuable pieces of art. I was surprised at first, but then I registered to attend the auction. After a month of holding back, finally I got the chance to attend that auction of ancient artifacts to add something to my antique collection. It was the first time I was visiting that place for auction, and I had never even heard of it before. The village was situated in a remote area. On my way, I had to go off the road on a muddy trail to cross the woods that covered the auction site. While I was on that trail, the sun was about to set, and it was nearly dark. All of a sudden, I noticed someone passing by right in front of me swiftly. I thought that maybe it was an animal. I stopped the car and got out. There was nothing under the car, and nothing anywhere around me. But as I got back inside the car, I looked around and saw a group of people surrounding me in long black gowns and crow. They were slowly advancing towards my car and closing in on me, which eventually turned into loud thuds on my car from outside. As they began to hit the car with their hands, I began to scream and covered my head. Suddenly, the noise faded, and as I looked up, there was no one around me. I thought maybe I was hallucinating because of the long, tiring journey. I drove immediately to the auction site and ignored what I'd just experienced. I figured it was just my mind playing tricks on me. When I reached it, I noticed there were only a few people at the auction, and all of them seemed strange. Anyhow, I bought some pieces of art until something came up that was not enlisted initially for the auction. A voodoo doll, and it was something that instantly tempted me to get it. I decided at that very moment that I wouldn't leave this place without it. There were a few ancient accessories along with that voodoo stuff, and the document revealed that they were used collectively for black magic. When the auctioneer finalized my bid for the voodoo doll, I was startled to see that none of the others were bidding on that doll. I thought it was a bit strange that none of them were interested in it, as if they knew something far more sinister that I did not. I got busy with my phone after that, and when I raised my head, everyone was gone, and only the things I bought were placed on a table in front of me, along with that doll. I looked around, but there was not a single soul around me. I thought I might have dozed off and everyone left. Since I had already paid for the artifacts, I gathered everything and left in my car. I passed through that same muddy trail, but this time no one came in my way. But right when I got onto a paved road surrounded by large trees, I saw in my rearview mirror those same creepy people in long black gowns and crow masks standing in the middle of the road, along with a few strange people from the auction as well. I was not sure what I was looking at. I rubbed my eyes, adjusted the rearview mirror, and looked again, but they were gone. They disappeared just like that. Ignoring it once more, I finally arrived at my house. I placed the stuff in the room where I kept the antiques from my collection. I even made a special place for the doll in a glass cabinet. Exhausted from the journey, I fell asleep immediately, unaware of the terror that was coming my way. My life took a tragic turn that night. I didn't know about the curse that I brought home along with that doll and what it was going to do with me. During the night while sleeping, I woke up to disturbing whispers of some ancient language that I couldn't understand. Initially, I thought it might be my neighbors praying, but it turned out to be something entirely different. I ignored it and tried to fall back asleep. Suddenly, something brushed against my feet, which felt like crooked fingers. That shook me up, but I thought it might be the blanket itself. Then I felt the same bony fingers on my neck, followed by someone breathing heavily, very close to me. I threw the blanket off immediately as I thought that a thief had entered my house. I took my baseball bat and checked all around the house, but did not find anyone. I came back to my room and went to bed again. But right at the moment when I was about to fall asleep, something tapped right above my forehead with its cold, crooked finger, which left me stunned, and I stood up to see who was there. Yet again, there was no one in the room except me. I thought I was going mad, when suddenly I started hearing someone whispering in that ancient language again. I was shocked to realize that it was coming from my collection room. A thought swept across my mind that maybe the thief had entered the room and was trying to steal my collectibles. I walked towards the room and opened the door slowly. When I got the first sight of that room, the floor slid below my feet and I dropped the bat. Everything in the room was turned upside down. Every artifact was either smashed against the wall or lying on the ground as if a tornado had passed by the room. Only one thing was intact, and it was that voodoo doll. But strangely, the doll was misplaced as well. I perfectly remembered that I kept it in the glass cabinet, but surprisingly, the doll was sitting right there on the table in the middle of the room, and the door of the cabinet was open. The streak of these strange occurrences didn't stop there. In that room, I saw a crooked figure, with his neck bent in a twisted way, his hair covering his face, and red, shiny eyes partially visible behind his hair. He was standing right beside the doll. He was moving wickedly in a strange manner and just around the doll. He wasn't bothered that I was standing there looking at him. Instead, he raised the voice of the incantations that he was chanting around that voodoo doll. Then again, he started whispering in a violently wicked and devilish voice. I couldn't understand anything he whispered or said, but I speculated that this was something like a cult or black magic that the figure was practicing. I was terrified and started shouting in a trembling voice, but the crooked figure did not respond to anything and kept on whispering in his violent tone. He was just moving his head aggressively and continuously. All of a sudden, the figure swiftly turned towards me, and once again it left me petrified to look at it closely. I couldn't say if it was human or something else, but his eyes were filled with evil intentions. His face was bent, and his neck twisted. He was wearing a long black dress, just like those people in the woods. As the figure approached me, I started screaming and fell unconscious on the floor. The second thing I remembered was waking up in a hospital with strange marks on my body. The doctors told me that my neighbor brought me to the hospital, along with the police when they heard me screaming in the house. When the police came, they heard a smashing sound from my house and broke the door to get in. Police found me unconscious on the floor, and everything in my house was torn apart, as if a storm just passed by. I couldn't understand what happened to me. The police told me that during that chaos, the room of my collectibles caught fire mysteriously, and only a few things were retrieved from the room. But the fire was stopped before spreading all across the house. The other policeman brought a box into the room, and he said that only these things were saved from the fire that night. When everyone left the room, I got up and opened the box. I saw the same voodoo doll at the top of the box. I stepped back, fell on the ground, and started screaming. Doctors came in and gave me an injection to calm me down. It took me a month to get out of that trauma. When I came back to normal life, I took that doll and went straight to the auction site to return it. While driving, on one sharp turn, I saw a figure walking along the roadside. He signaled for me to stop. I slowed down close to him. I lowered the window and asked, "You need a ride?" As he turned to answer, I noticed that his neck was twisted in a crooked way, and he had a tilted posture. He looked exactly like the strange entity I had encountered at my house. Right when I was about to speed away, he opened the back door and got in, before I even had the chance to blink. It was so fast. He spoke in his dense voice that he needed to go just down that road towards a muddy path. That was exactly where I was going. He remained silent throughout the ride, and I was scared out of my mind. After some time, I felt as if someone was very close to my ear. I could feel the warm breath on my neck, but I didn't have the courage to turn around and look. All of a sudden, I heard a whisper in my right ear, "Do you want to live?" And as I looked up in the rearview mirror, the man was not in the back seat. I pressed the brakes and my car slid on the road. With tires screeching, it finally came to a stop. I turned around to look again, and this time, there he was. That man was sitting right there, as if nothing had happened. He was facing down, with a creepy grin on his face, and raised his eyes to ask if everything was fine. I asked him if I heard something, and if it was him. He behaved like an innocent child, as if he didn't know anything and didn't see what happened. Then after about 5 minutes of driving, we got to the muddy off-road path. As I was driving through it, those strange people in long black gowns came in front of me again, and as I stopped the car, they surrounded me and began to chant loudly. They were advancing towards the car and began to hit it with their bare hands. The man sitting behind me was calm, and as I turned to look at him, he told me to get out of the car and run away into the trees beside the road. Then he opened the door and ran away. I didn't waste a second. I took the box with the doll that was in the passenger seat, threw it out, turned the car around and sped back home, the pedal hitting the floor almost the entire way back. When I got home, I couldn't believe what I saw. Just when I opened the door with my trembling hands, still shaken to the core, there, on the floor, sat the doll. I freaked out and called the police. Now I am here, talking to you, officer. Please help me.